Satoru Gojo is back, but not in the way we expected. The true identity of the person who has taken over the Honored One's body is Yuta Okutsu, using Kenjaku's copied ability, body transfer. The real plot twist happened. Yuta, possessing Satoru Gojo's body, returns to the battlefield to face the invincible Sukuna. Both activate their domain expansions and the battle of the strongest resumes. Let's dive into this and talk about the bombshell that was chapter 261 of Jujutsu. I still can't believe it. When I saw that page, I immediately thought, let's see if it's really Gojo, or just a fake out. I kept turning the pages, and suddenly there was Gojo's face, but with stitches on his forehead. I was like, Kenjaku's back, and even Sukuna looked shocked. Oh my god, it's him. Then he says he's Yuta, and you don't know whether to cry or go crazy. Oh my god, it's Yuta, insane. And suddenly, both are in domain expansion mode. Guys, there were 3 main possibilities to explain what we saw at the end of the last chapter. The most unlikely, in my view, was Satoru Gojo actually returning to life to face Sukuna. Considering Sukuna is already on his last legs, Itadori is finally getting the spotlight he deserves. After all, he is the series' protagonist, though we often forget this. And we can see a glimmer of hope for Sukuna's defeat at Itadori's hands. So at this point in the story, I saw no reason to bring Gojo back. I confess I would go crazy if they found a way to bring him back, or at least tried. But I didn't see the need unless it served the purpose it did. The second possibility in terms of probability was that the scene was just a hallucination by Sukuna. Given Sukuna's nearing defeat, it would make sense for him to have a vision of Gojo's ghost, as we've seen many times with characters who are about to die. However, even though this was a plausible scenario, I refuse to believe it was just a bait by the author. If it were just a hallucination, it should have been made clear in the middle of the previous chapter, not as the huge cliffhanger that stirred the entire community. Hence, I didn't believe the author would use such a significant hook just to trick us. There had to be more, and the author knew this well, or he would face backlash. Therefore, this was the second most likely possibility, not the first. The most probable scenario was Yuta inheriting Satoru Gojo's 6 eyes after his death. We know Yuta and Gojo are distant relatives, highlighted in this chapter with both being descendants of Michizane Sugawara, perhaps the founder of the Gojo clan. Some argue that a 6 eyes user must be born with them, as seen with baby Gojo in his flashback. So Yuta couldn't inherit this power. But this isn't necessarily the case. Remember when Kenjaku killed a previous 6 eyes user and tried to assimilate Tengen immediately afterward? Another 6 eyes user emerged to thwart his plan. Considering Kenjaku didn't wait 15 years for another 6 eyes user to be born and grow, it makes sense that the 6 eyes were inherited by another adult Gojo clan member at that moment. So, the author had the perfect excuse for Yuta to inherit the 6 eyes and copy Gojo's limitless technique before the battle, now using it efficiently. The ghost Sukuna saw with those unmistakable eyes was actually Yuta with the 6 eyes. It's funny how Yuta's battle features resemble Gojo's. This could even explain Sukuna's confusion upon seeing that figure. When Kenjaku was still alive and hadn't been killed by Yuta, there was also the possibility of him possessing Gojo's body, while Yuta inherited the 6 eyes and copied the limitless technique. This would lead to Kenjaku with Gojo's limitless power against Yuta with the same. Another alternative discussed was Gojo returning as a vengeful cursed spirit like his ancestor Michizane Sugawara. But this wouldn't be possible since such a phenomenon only occurs if a sorcerer is killed without cursed energy. And we know Gojo was killed using cursed energy, so this wasn't feasible. In the end, the author, as always, chose the most improbable path. Yuta copying Kenjaku's ability and transferring his own brain into Satoru Gojo's body. We know Kenjaku can transfer his brain to another body, not only possessing it, but also using the innate technique of his victim. On the other hand, Yuta has the innate copy ability, so he made Rika devour what was left of Kenjaku's body, storing his body transfer technique and then possessing Gojo's body, acquiring not only the limitless technique but also the 6 eyes that remained in Gojo's body after his death. Call me the guy who can't get over Gojo's death. But there's still a chance for the sorcerers to discuss bringing Gojo back to life directly without possession. There were ways to attempt this, but it wasn't discussed. If Shoko couldn't revive Gojo with reverse technique alone, she could have teamed up with Yutahime, who could enhance her energy release and boost her reverse technique, forming a powerful combo. Or for example, Shoko or Utahime could make a pact to strengthen their energy release at this moment, sacrificing something in the future, as Sukuna has been doing and as Kasumi Miwa considered when facing Kenjaku. So even though I didn't see the need to bring Gojo back, analyzing the story from the outside, it doesn't make sense for the sorcerers not to try to bring him back to life. From their perspective, more help is better, and this would be a good alternative that should have been considered. Moreover, Yuta's plan depended on defeating Kenjaku, so they could have discussed other possibilities if Gojo lost to Sukuna. They could try to bring him back with a ritual or teleport Yuta to revive him with a reverse technique, considering Yuta has this ability. Delving further into the chapter, we see Yuta's justification for possessing Satoru Gojo's body. Yuta says they are about to face the strongest sorcerer in history and can't let only Gojo become a monster in the process. But we wonder, how would Gojo become a monster? This chapter gives us a flashback of Gojo about to kill the entire jujutsu world's high command. When we look back at chapter 223, we see these high-ranking sorcerers dead on the ground, but we didn't know who killed them. I speculated it could have been Gojo or Kenjaku. Now we know it was Gojo, who did this to prevent a repeat of the chaos in Japan at the end of the Shibuya arc, where the high command exploited the situation to push their agenda, ordering Itadori's execution and branding Gojo a criminal. This is why Yuta volunteered to become a monster alongside his mentor. Another interesting point is that Yuta's return to the battlefield wasn't random. Although we've seen Itadori and Yuta team up against Sukuna, and now Yuta and Todo fighting Sukuna, it makes sense for Yuta to appear now. In chapter 18, early in the manga, Gojo mentions the next generation surpassing special grade sorcerers. Despite Gojo's indirect return overshadowing Itadori and other characters, the spotlight might still shift back to Itadori as suggested in this chapter. Meanwhile, Yuta in Gojo's body goes all out against Sukuna, both activating their domain expansions, Malevolent Shrine against Limitless Void. Unlike when Gojo used his domain against Sukuna and lost, now Yuta knows what to do to win. What an ending. Regardless of the debate, seeing the two expand their domains again, with Yuta in Gojo's body and Sukuna mimicking Gojo's hand gesture, was thrilling. This moment of Gojo's return, even if through Yuta, creates a much greater impact than Yuta directly inheriting the Six Eyes. It's huge, even though some might be upset Gojo wasn't literally revived. I didn't see the need or hope for his revival, but the last chapter's cliffhanger was too big to be just a bait. So, it's good it turned out to be something in between, plausible and possible. The only thing I missed was seeing the sorcerers discuss ways to bring Gojo back to life and attempting it, even if it ultimately failed, leading them to Yuta's plan. But at least they could have considered it. Lastly, Gojo ended up being killed on the same day as his best friend Gedo, and on the day of their deaths, their bodies were possessed using Kenjaku's technique. What did you think of this chapter? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.